Let's talk about the biggest questions for Week 8 next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers here with Heath Cummings. I don't know why I was struggling to get your name out, but Heath Cummings. We've already done one podcast today. Maybe I've just had enough of you, Heath. No, obviously never.
You're not the only one.
Never that. I just got a little confused. But we are here to talk about the biggest questions heading into Week 8. For my Week 8 rankings, I went to Twitter and got some of the biggest questions from our audience. Some great stuff there. And I think the biggest question for the quarterback position, there's a lot of them. Can we trust Joe Burrow after he struggled again in Week 7 or Week 6 before the bye? But I'm going to focus on the Titans quarterbacks because in those 2 QB leagues and even in 1 QB leagues, if you're desperate, Malik Willis has some appeal. He should be a good scrambler, a good runner. And I'm hoping he took a step forward as a passer after beating Will Levis out for the backup job. But now we're hearing that they might use both quarterbacks this week if Ryan Tannehill's out. Can you trust any of them, and what are your expectations there?
I'm trying to decide if I would rather start Malik Willis in a 2-quarterback league or Joe Burrow in a 1-quarterback league. The answer is I don't want to start either of them in either of those things. But no, I have no confidence. Like, it might even be a hot hand approach. It might be that Malik Willis plays the first drive and Will Levis plays the second, and whoever does better gets the third. If you told me that Malik Willis was playing the entire game, then he might come close to sneaking into my top 24, but probably not. There's just not anybody on a bye. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't pick him up. If you don't have a starting quarterback, he might be better. I think the real question is, will either of those two be better than your average flex?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Malik Willis in a super flex league, and it's going to be really interesting because Ryan Tannehill has been my number 2 quarterback there, and yeah, I'll have to make a decision on that. It's like either him, Tyson Bagent, or like Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah,
as my super flex there.
I'd probably go Bagent there, but I think I'd go Bourne over Willis.
All right, let's move on to the running back position, and it's been kind of a tough season. If you look at it, I think there's 12 running backs averaging at least 15 PPR points, but that includes like Deontay Foreman is technically averaging 15 PPR points per game, and Devon Achane is averaging 15 points per game, and a lot of guys who haven't actually been all that useful for most of the season. But I do want to ask, what's your favorite buy low option at the running back position right now?
Ooh. I mean, there are definitely a lot of options. I think I would probably say my favorite buy low is Austin Eckler. There seems to be genuine concern, and I have concern that he's going to justify a top 2 or 3 running back ranking, but there are some people out there talking about him like he's just a number 2 running back now, and I would expect that things are going to get better for Eckler. So yeah, I'd buy him at like a late second round cost.
I would also throw out Josh Jacobs, who has struggled this season, was still leading all running backs in expected fantasy points heading into Week 7. I haven't seen the updated numbers on that yet, but he dropped it, or actually had a touchdown in Week 7 on a passing play that was a really nice over-the-shoulder catch that was overturned by replay. Was the only thing that he really did in that game that was good, but the problem is he's been so inefficient as a rusher this season. He's actually been fine as a receiver, and that was what made him stand out last season. And it's just a question of whether he can get back there. What are your thoughts on Josh Jacobs?
Well, I do think it's sad that receiving touchdown didn't count because he still has 0 for his entire career, despite the fact that he's caught like 100 passes, never scored a receiving touchdown.
He's the new Jacoby Myers.
I do not have a lot of hope that the rushing efficiency is going to improve. I don't necessarily think it's all his fault. The Raiders' offensive line has been pretty terrible in that regard. And I'm not sure how scared teams are of Jimmy G or Brian Hoyer. But I think he's probably going to be in that 3 to 3.5 yards per carry range. I think he's probably going to be a number 2 running back. I would definitely prefer Eckler.
All right, let's move on to the wide receiver position. And it's funny, like 4 weeks ago, there was a lot of, is DeVonta Smith actually the Eagles' number 1 wide receiver? Because he had this great run at the end of last season where he was getting, I think, 8 targets in 9 straight games to close out the season. We've turned around there. A.J. Brown tying the NFL record for most games with at least 125 yards with 5 straight. And DeVonta Smith has single-digit PPR points in 3 straight. What's your concern level for DeVonta Smith?
I mean, I kind of wish that DeVonta Smith would just throw a fit and yell at Jalen Hurts on the sidelines. So maybe they'd throw him the ball. Like that seemed to work. I don't know why he wouldn't. It seems like maybe he's too nice. He's a guy who comes out around wide receiver 30 in my projections this week because everyone's playing. I can't imagine I'm actually sitting him anywhere. I move him up to around 24 in the rankings. He's a no doubt about it starter if you start 3 wide receivers, and you're probably starting him if you start 2.
And I'll just piggyback off a question that you asked before the show, a little facetiously, I'll say the way you asked it, but is tight end deep now?
As it's currently constructed, yes, tight end is deep. There's 7, no doubt about it, must starts. There's at least 3 others that I feel good about starting, and then you've got Dalton Kincaid coming, you've got Trey McBride coming, you've got maybe Michael Mayer going to be a thing. I think as soon as Justin Fields gets back, Cole Kmet's the top 12 tight end. Jake Ferguson gets back from a bye this week. Yeah, tight end is deep.
Did you mention Trey McBride?
Yeah, I said we got Dalton Kincaid and Trey McBride coming.
Zach Ertz was placed on IR. Yeah. Trey McBride, pretty good production profile in college, pretty good prospect, has an opportunity now to step into a role that's been somewhat valuable for Zach Ertz if he was, averaging more than like 6 yards per catch.
He's been targeted on 23% of the routes that he's run. I'd expect he's going to run about 90% of the routes at tight end now. And he is second behind only Travis Kelce in yards per route run as a tight end.
There you go. That's going to do it for Fantasy Football Today in 5. We'll see you tomorrow.